My name is Delmar Larson. I'm a professor of chemistry at the University of California, Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of LibreText. I've been pursuing open efforts for the last 17 years of my academic experience, and it's grown in scope to take over a significant part of my academic life, including my research and other aspects that I also have to deal with. So anyways, I have pasted onto the chat. Well, I was going to paste on the chat if I can figure out where the chat is, but these are three QR codes. If you happen to have a phone, you want to zoom into it, you can. These are just demonstrations that I'll be able to show you a little bit of what ADAPT does. Um, so as Justin mentioned before, anyone who's been paying attention to LibreText over the last handful of years has seen our scope expand beyond just textbooks into a wide range of other uh, platforms that are necessary, we believe, in order to be able to take the place of the commercial publisher in the classroom. And that's ultimately our goal, is to be able to swap out, sort of like Indiana Jones, with this golden, very expensive solution that we've been using for a long time into something that's significantly cheaper, but with the same set of resources. And so that means that we have expanded into a wide range of different uh, pushes, a lot of them involving technology development. And the first of those major pushes was the homework system. And this was started in 2020 with a grant that we received from the state of California in order to build a general chemistry adaptive learning infrastructure that we decided to expand that into a multifaceted homework infrastructure that has adaptive learning components associated with it, in addition to a handful of other things that we're going to be discussing for most of this day. Um, and such. So let's talk about this. So the way that I want to actually structure this thing is I want to spend 10 to 15 minutes on this presentation that I have on the screen. Then I will be going into more hands-on approach. So it's important for you to be able to get access to Adapt. If you haven't logged into Adapt, you have access to it via the Launchpad that Justin mentioned before, or if you go to adapt.libretext.org, you can go about doing that. But we're going to be transitioning again into hands-on approach rather than a more formalized presentation like what we have here. But I do want to at least lay down the groundwork that we have here. And I just saw the chat pop up, so I can actually paste the URLs for this, the QR codes that I have off here. So anyways, the key point that we have here in Adapt is recognizing that no one technology exists that's able to cover the full realm of what academic needs are out there. And efforts in order to try to take a specific technology and push it to chemistry, push it to psychology, push it to economics, push it to anatomy, push it to interactivities for secondary languages and such, it can oftentimes be an exercise in futility. So our approach is to take something a little bit more flexible. That's something similar to how learning management systems operate, in that we take different technologies that exist, good technologies that focus on specific things, and integrate it into the platform itself, so that while the overall umbrella looks the same, the individual technologies may differ in terms of what you use it, and that by and large it doesn't matter so much for the instructor or for the student side in terms of using that question. It obviously matters in terms of the technology or how you build those questions. So we have two general classes in ADAPT. We have our auto-graded questioning capabilities, which involves four core technologies: web work, IMathAS, native technology, which is our term for the technologies that we integrated into ADAPT, and H5P. H5P of these four is special in that you're able to access it and build interactive that you can put into your textbook itself via the studio. The studio is available on the Launchpad, and your account gives you access to it right now. Um, the iMathA is the technology underlying MyOpenMath and Lumen Learning's OHM system. And WebWork is a technology that predates many of these technologies that came out in 1990 when the web was still very exciting, hence why they named it web work as a combination of homework and web. Then we have our open-ended questioning infrastructure requires human grading where students can upload text or audio or files in order to evaluate them. And you can actually have mixtures of both auto-graded and open-ended question infrastructure that's out there. So I'm just going to mention this briefly, and the details are not overly important, but any homework system has a range of different components in order to be able to function. For example, if you took web work, you have a problem builder, a library, a searcher, a delivery, assessment infrastructure, a checker, gradebook, and learning management interface. If you had the same thing for iMath AS, whether it's MyOpenMath or its OHM, it has its own infrastructure. H5P is not entirely designed as a homework system, although many people use it like that, and it has comparable capabilities, especially when integrated into learning management systems. And QTI is an example of a native technology. That's what most learning management systems run their quizzing infrastructure on. Now, the key point of what we want to do is if you want to master the capabilities of multiple technologies, you need to be able to master each of these components. And that could be a very daunting task for an individual faculty to do. So what Adapt does is essentially streamline these technologies in order to be able to make it so that they are able to be used within Adapt as a delivery and checker-based system and for construction, but otherwise everything else is the same. So you can have a search and you can identify questions that are one technology or another technology, and it doesn't matter because if you're just going to be using and adopting those questions in your classroom, who cares about what actually is underlying that technology, as long as that question has the features that you want it to have. Uh, so Adapt is designed for multimodal use. Again, our intent has always been to build something that has the greatest scope, which means is useful for the widest range of faculty out there. Uh, and that also means a range of different modalities of how students interact with the Adapt system. For example, students can interact with Adapt directly through the website if they were to just sign in via adapt.libretext.org. Um, I will mention that if you deep link Adapt into your learning management system, the students click on a button and then it pulls out and they basically interact with the website, but they interact with the website through their LMS. Alternatively, you can embed questions and Adapt directly into the textbook. So your textbook can become a homework system of sorts that provides the opportunity in order to have students engage with the homework right next to the content that they're supposed to be consuming and mastering that's out there. We have an in-class personal response system, basically a clicker or phone app that is going to be uploaded at the end of this week. I'm willing to stick around after today's activities in order to go over the phone app. For those of you that are using Android systems, I can actually give you a non-store version of that in order to be able to play around. I can show you a little bit about how this can take the place of commercial iClickers or commercial turning text or other technologies that are available there. And lastly, irrespective of how students interact with Adapt, it can pass back scores to the learning management system that can then be folded into conventional grading that many faculty use. Um, this is one example of a component of Adapt, in this case here, the studio, the H5P studio, that is embedded into a textbook. This is for intermediate nutrition out of Kansas State University by Professor Lynchfield. And just basically shows how you can make a dynamic textbook out of these technologies. This is just H5P embedded into it, but you can embed any of the Adapt technologies into your textbook and move it forward. Now, I just wanted to mention a few of these things. I talked already about the phone app. It's not overly important, this picture here, or video, but I'm happy in order to go over this later on. Again, the point is to be able to make a native technology that is able to provide students what they want in order to be able to engage with their homework, but also to engage with it from a clicker-based infrastructure where you can submit polls and have the students or the audience members answer those polls directly. And like I said, this is not in the stores yet, but we do have, at least for Android, a kit that you can download right now in order to be able to test this thing out. I expect this to be operational next month, subject to the reviews that's off of that. Sarah asked a question: is there a cost to any H5P content for the campus? No. That you can use it right now. Is it accessible? H5P and accessibility is a complicated issue. Many of the questions are not accessible by nature. For example, drag and drop is difficult for you to be able to make a drag and drop question accessible because it intrinsically requires fully working eyes, or at least reasonably working visual capabilities in order to be able to drag and read off of there. Adapt is designed in order to be able to provide a secondary question infrastructure so you can use H5P in and especially the non-accessible versions of H5P in your classrooms, as long as you have this alternative created for those questions for the students that require it. And that allows you to be able to use so you're not in violation of accessibility rules, including violations of the new Department of Justice accessibility rules that I'll be talking about tomorrow, which is going to affect all of us, at least all of us in America. With potential financial limitations or uh, limitations associated with it. So, anyways, uh, I mentioned that Adapt is multimodal for not just delivery, but also for its infrastructure, how you actually provide these sort of questions. One are you can have questions that are conventional, that is, that you have courses have assignments, assignments have questions. Building the courses, building the assignments, and assigning questions into the assignment is the goal that I have for this presentation and the start of the presentation that I'll have after lunch. That's conventional way in which we go about doing these things. But Adapt is designed in order to have adaptive learning capabilities embedded into it, specifically what we call learning trees, which I'll talk about momentarily. But the point behind learning trees is instead of having a single question, you can have a question with a series of nodes which have expositions or mini assessments in order to be able to dissect out a complicated question into its constituent components so students can actually learn from that in a much more engaging fashion than just here's a solution that's out there. Think of it as a virtual tutor, but it's a very passive virtual tutor out there. And again, I'll talk about more details behind that a little bit later on, and also give you guys an opportunity in order to play with that in one of the breakout rooms. I'm going to skip over this. Well, I'll just mention it quite briefly in that each of the technologies we have specific advantages and disadvantages depending upon what specific technology you use. And invariably, when people are using Adapt, the question comes up was, which technology do you want to use? Do you want to use WebWork, iMath AS, QTI, H5P? In the native technologies, which is what QTI is in, there's a range of different ones, whether you're dealing with, for example, next generation nursing, organic chemistry, or virtual dissection. And the question ultimately is, if you have something like multiple choice, all four of these technologies are able to be to address that question. So you say, well, which one do you actually want to use? And it's basically a function of which one you are comfortable with in order to be able to move forward, at least for simple like questions. For more advanced questions like algorithmic capabilities, significant figures, and more things that are STEM oriented, WebWork and iMath are really convenient. H5P is really good for visual interactivities, although it has accessibility issues, like I mentioned before. So it's a sort of a give and take in order to decide which technology you want to do. I oftentimes talk about the different aspects of not just accessibility, but security. I'm going to skip over that now unless someone has a specific question dealing with that later on. So let me tie this all together into a bigger picture within how we operate. We have a range of different technologies in the core that are all folded together into the Adapt overlay. The individual faculty, if they're just adopting, doesn't need to know about one technology versus another necessarily, or the student themselves. You can embed those questions into your textbook in order to make your textbooks more engaging, or what I refer to as the textbook of the future. Uh, you can embed adapt directly into your learning management system in order to pass back scores. The books that you may be augmenting with the adapt can also pass back scores if you embed those questions summatively, which means students need to sign in order to be able to see, versus formatively, where anyone can actually solve it and get the answer that's out there and such. And then what's not mentioned on here is the modality of being able to use the phone either as the clicker alternative or just being able to use it for solving problems that students can have that's out there. So it's multifaceted. Now, this is an example of the studio. The studio is, of those four technologies, the one that's accessible directly to you. You can actually access our iMath AS server, but I'm not going to be discussing it here. But you can access this via the Launchpad. So when you go to the Launchpad, the little rocket ship that Justin was mentioned before, you'll see it on the far right because S, it's alphabetical and S is near the end. And that gives you the ability in order to start engaging in creating these interactives that you can then embed directly into your book. You can embed them in other sources if you want. You can embed them into your learning management system. So if your campus is spending a lot of money for H5P for your campus, which is actually generally the case when you purchase H5P for your campus, there's no reason for doing so if you have full access as a LibreNet campus. You can even embed them into other open textbooks. You can embed them to press books or other things like that. You'll make me cry if you do that, but it is still quite possible in order to do that. This is what it looks like, but we're going to be doing hands-on. And I just wanted to show a few things that we have off here. And this is part of the interactive links that I pasted into the chat, or if you got it in the QR code. This is the new interactive organic chemistry molecule generation. We spent a lot of effort in order to go into expanding the scope of ADAPT in order to be able to address organic chemistry. And this is a quick little video, but again, the demonstrations that I pasted here gives you the ability in order to play with something like this because it's a lot more complicated than just a numerical presentation of things. Um, the One of the key aspects that we're hoping in order to be able to have implemented by next month is the ability in order to generate organic chemistry, to use organic chemistry technologies in an authentic way. That involves, at least the way that we want to do it, having students be able to write organic chemistry molecules on a piece of paper and then take a screenshot of that in order to be able to convert it into a digital version that you can then modify online. Because it's the creating these molecules online could be a time-consuming process, but if you actually can write it down and then spit it up there, you're able to process that. And this is an example of a technology that's very similar to this. This comes out of Stanford by Todd Martinez that uses something similar where you can draw in a molecule and then you can see this is augmented reality, which is not what we wanted to be able to implement, although we could, and interact with a variety of different molecules as you draw it, bring it up, and then make it an authentic manner. It can also be used for other things like objects, in this case here, identifying that there is caffeine in coffee. So there's a range of different approaches in order to make something more authentic in terms of what students do, what instructors do, and then couple it into the digital aspect associated with auto grading. And lastly, is our virtual dissection infrastructure, which is still very new. And it's an infrastructure designed in order to be able to take the place of commercial solutions for virtual dissections, which is actually really quite pricey out there for anatomy classes. In this case here's a skull. We're able to rip it apart and interact with it. That could be embedded into the textbook. Again, your textbook becomes more engaging, or it could be a question within ADAPT where you ask something like, identify the mandible. And then you can pick the part and identify that. And there are a handful of other technologies connected or other question types connected to this technology. But this is useful not just for anatomy, but for any field that requires spatial structure or spatial determination, like architecture, crystallography, for example. Many types of physics classes requires three-dimensional capabilities. And I'm sure there are other fields out there that I have still new in our terms of learning. So we're very excited in order to be able to release this capabilities. While we got the technology out there, now we're into the stage of building the models around it in order to be able to make it effective for taking the place again of commercial publishers. With that, I'm going to end that overview on there. I saw a few questions in the chat. I'm happy in order to address it before we jump straight into the adapt infrastructure, and we get our hands basically dirty, at least in a virtual sense. So let me knock that out and take a look at what we have on the chat, and feel free to chime in with any questions that I may have spurred on. Otherwise, I will get going here. So Sister Mary asked, do the points we assign to the rubrics that we create pass on to the learning management system? So ADAPT has a rubric infrastructure, which may be what you're referring to. That when you actually write down the rubrics in there, it will sum them all up, and then it passes that back to your learning management system. It doesn't pass back each individual component of the rubric because most, if not all, learning management systems don't have their own infrastructure for maintaining a rubric from an external source that pops in there. The interface that's commonly used between LMSs and other technologies is what's called LTI, or Learning Tools Interoperability. And it's exceedingly, I'm sure there's a more tactile way from it. I'll just say dumb. It very limited in terms of what you're able to pass back into it. So with that, please everybody feel free in order to sign up for the go into the adapt. That's not the right one. Here we go. So again, as a reminder, if you go to the launch pad, you'll have adapt here on the far left because it's capitalized and A comes in the beginning of everything. We're going to proceed to go through here. Again, I have three primary goals that I want to be able to address here. And those three primary goals are be able to have you guys create a course in Adapt, be able to create an assignment in Adapt, and to be able to add questions to the assignment Adapt. Those three skills are basically 75% of adapting that most faculty use. The other 25% are more complicated, depending upon a range of different things that, and we're happy in order to be able to address that after in the afternoon, our afternoon, that is. Um, but those are the three skills I want to be able to impart onto you. And feel free to chime in at any point if you have any questions or throw them into the chat. I'm happy to stop in order to be able to address that. So is everyone able to get into your ADAPT infrastructure? I feel like I'm teaching a class here where I should be saying Bueller. You got a few people saying yes. Okay. So I've been using Adapt since fall of 2021, which was not long after we started building it. So I have a lot of classes in here. Most of you comes in and it's completely bare, empty right out there. So just ignore all these things. Right after I just said ignore it, I will just comment that I just want to point out color codes here. So when we actually make a course, again, that's one of the first thing that we're going to want to do. The course will come in with a specific color code. In this case here, it'd be red. So we have two color codes here, well, lack of a color and red, a red hue. What that means is it's the same thing in your learning management system in terms of publish or unpublish. So if it's red, that means students will never see that question. Sorry, they'll never see that course at all, even if they are enrolled into it. It's like unpublished courses in your learning management system. And then the ones that are unpublished here are the ones that if you are enrolled into the course, you're able to see that. So all these ones down here are basically archived. They're all redded, so students don't actually know that they're there, even though they've already enrolled into the class before. And such. And this right here is my class in winter, which I'm starting to play with and tweak around because I can do it. I know what I'm doing because I use this class already, so I'm just tweaking as we go. So, anyways, so the first thing to mention uh, is that you can both create a course or you can embed an existing course. Uh, and it's sometimes useful depending upon how time works off of here. And Justin, am I going to 10:30? I don't have actually I do. I just want to make sure that I am on track. Okay. So we have the ability in order uh, to embed an existing course, as long as that existing course is a public course. So as instructor, you have the ability in order to make a course that's private, so it's only your own. So basically, you're like a seagull saying mine, 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 and you don't want anyone else to be able to see it other than the students that are enrolled in that class. Uh, and you can similarly, when you create your own questions, make it private so it's only for you. Now that conflicts a little bit with the sharing is caring model associated with OER, but if it takes the place of the commercial publisher in the classroom, we're happy in order to be able to provide adapt in order to be able to do that. So just as a upshot, I'd like you to be able to import an existing class first. So you have three options on here: new course, import course, and then you have this button called Consult Insight. You'll see Consult Insight in various places on Adapt. And as we develop Adapt, you'll start to see it in more places. Think of it as sort of a how-to button, so a more targeted question or targeted FAQ, for example. It goes into here and it shows a video that would explain a little bit about how to create a question, or in this case, how to create a course that's out there. And this is a video that was created last year in order to support these things. And you have a range of other types of facts or questions that you can grab in order to be able to address them. So anyways, let's ignore that for now and just import a course. So I'd like you to click on that. An importing course needs basically only a title of a course or a topic of a course and an instructor name. We're going to expand the scope here in order to reflect some of the metadata that's connected to the courses, but this handles things reasonably well. So for example, let's say I want to, where are we here? I want to embed a organic chemistry course. So I can go through here and I can see a range of different courses that are public for me to be able to consume, aka import if I want. And they have the names connected to here of the authors that are there. You'll also see that there's a strange author here that's on a lot of them called the Commons, or the Commons instructor. The Commons instructor is our generic account that we use for the courses that we curate as a central pool for people to tap into. But of course, you can grab anyone else's course that they have made public. So I encourage you to go in there and just type in whatever topic that you may be interested in. I'm not guaranteeing that we have that topic right now, although we're expanding quickly, but you can type in lots of arbitrary words and you'll come up with a range of them. And I'm just going to grab something like um, I'll grab this organic chemistry course. When I do so, I have the ability in order to use their dates that comes with it. I can modify that afterwards, so it doesn't really matter which one I do. And I'm just going to import it. So I'd like you to import it right now. It will take a few seconds in order to do, depending upon how big that course is. It's already been created and it brings this thing down here. So I'd like everyone to import at least one course, and it may not be the perfect course. Don't worry about that right now. Just to get the an existing course that you have in place there, and give me a thumbs up or some other gesture so that I know that you're good so far. Adam, Letitia, Deb. Still about half of you guys. I'll give you guys just a few more moments and then I'll continue on.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. Some people are lost because they went to one of the formative courses, the 3 links that were there. If you're there and you are on one of the demo ones, you'll have to go back to adapt.libretext.org, end that session, and then log back in again to get into the instructor one. So
Oh, Sorry, the chat wasn't moving forward. Um,
Aleli, you might need to just log back out and then log back in, especially if you had two tabs open with different adapts and different ones.
yeah, I'm sorry. There were a lot of things in the chat, and I didn't see them because it wasn't automatically scrolling. So my apologies on that. Uh, uh, I can address a few of these things. While those you are trying to sign in can do so. Like I said, it's easy in order to go to the launch pad. And if this says anonymous or something like that, just sign out and then just sign back again. You just click the button and you're able to do so. That's because formative questions you sign, it automatically signs you in as anonymous. And those links that I pasted there are formative questions, meaning that you don't need to be enrolled in the class. That's the reason why I created it like that. So.
Yes,
Um,
Sarah, you should be able to go there.
yeah.
Sorry.
Sarah, you can do that, or you can go to adapt.libretext.org. Um, that goes to the same spot.
You'll
Yeah.
know that if you're in one of the anonymous sessions, if in the upper right-hand corner, instead of support, control panel, dashboard, like Delmar has, it'll say support, then end session.
Yeah,
So
you're not going to have the control panel.
yeah,
So I'm
where the
actually,
control panel is, you'll see end session. Just click end session.
yeah. So, um,
It looks like a lot of people are saying thanks and thumbs up. So hopefully most people are resolved and back to this
I
where
hope
we're at.
so. Let me mention something while some people are getting through there. When you actually create a course like that, ultimately we're going to want to be able to have students enroll into the course. Uh, and how they enroll into the course depends upon how you actually use the course. For example, if you have coupled your course into your learning management system, uh, and you sync them together, you can make it so that you can get the roster from the learning management system that automatically brings in the students into Adapt. If you're not using it with learning management system, you can then get an access code, which is available in the course that you hand out to your students and they can actually register for it. Or you can invite them if you have a roster or a list of names and email addresses or email addresses in order to be able to do that. So there are different functionalities in terms of getting students into the class, depending upon how you use it and what technology you couple to it. Uh, so Sister Mary, there's a button up here when you log into Adapt that says import course. That is how you actually import the course right there. Are you able to see that? So Kim asked, is there a charge for a student to use the system? Yes and no, depending upon where you're at. So if you're in the state of California, because California invested $2.5 million in terms of building Adapt, the deal that we made with them was that it was to be free for students in order to be able to use, at least while we have sustainability issues handled. Outside the state of California, it cost $15 per 6 months per student. Uh, so then up to $30 per year. And that's meant to be obviously capped at $30 because there's only 12 months per year that's out there. So we want to be able to minimize this. It costs money in order to maintain the infrastructure. Uh, and we just need to find some support in order to be able to do so. The and it, we've This was the first foray in terms of separating out something that's 100% free, like our textbooks, into something that requires a little bit of financial support to maintain it. Because what's the point of building something like this if you don't actually support it? Otherwise, it collapses. That's out there. So, um, Francis, I think you are still not signed in with your account. Um, Justin, can you? Yeah. I don't think we should. Let's not paste those demos because I think they're complicating things because of the anonymous perspective off there. I think I gummed things up a little bit
That was someone who asked for one
here
to
by
copy later.
introducing something that conflicts with instructor. Yeah. Um, okay. So, like I said, if you sign out and sign in again. If you happen to be in your demo, then this should all be fine. So hopefully you have an account, a course that you brought in. If you want to actually make it so students, if they were enrolled, of course, to see it, you can click the shown toggle. It will then tell you it's going to unhide the course. And I understand. And now it turns from red into either gray or white, depending upon where it's in the table. And then students are ready to go with that. Here's the title. If I click on that, I'll actually pull it up. It does throw in the word import at the end to represent that as an import. Obviously, I can edit that. It tells me the term. Every course has a term connected to it. And then here it has a range of action items connected to it. The trash can is relatively obvious. That's how you delete that course. This right here is how you clone. So you'll see this sort of copy options, and that gives you the ability in order to duplicate a course or duplicate an assignment or even to duplicate a question uh, via this same icon. This right here is the course properties I'm going to pull up momentarily. And this right here gives me access to the grade book. If I click on this thing, it's not going to show anything because there are no students enrolled in the class, but it will show me the different sections that are assignments that are set up for that course. Uh, so I'm just going to click on course properties, or I can click on either of these things. Um, this right here will show me all the assignments. Again, the structure is a course has assignments, assignments have questions. Yeah, at least in the conventional manner. When we use learning trees, then the assignments become consisting of multiple trees. So you can think of an assignment as a orchard instead of a standard assignment that's out there. Okay, so um, thank you, Justin, for working on that. These are all read out in the same way we had before. So if students were to sign in, if these assignments were available for them to access, they wouldn't be able to do it because this is a master switch that's out there. And it has a range of different dates connected to it, including when it was released. That's when students are able to see it, and when it's available, or when it's due. That's connected there, and what its current status is. And these are connected to the dates for the assignments. Uh, and such. So I can click on one of these assignments, and here are a series of questions. This one here has 4 questions onto it. You can see that each question has an ID number. That ID number is unique to that question. Uh, and then in many cases, if possible, it will tell you what type that question is. This is multiple choice. How many points have been assigned to it? Again, we used someone else's course that we brought in. If we want to be able to get a quick view of that, we can see what the solution is for that one. In this case here, it's more of an answer than a solution. Uh, if I want to rearrange these questions, I can go about doing that. You'll notice that the titles are put together. I have the ability to edit the question, to clone the question, or to trash the question. In this case here, I don't have the ability to clone the question because the person who created this question did not make this question public. Uh, uh, so I can use it because I brought it in here, but I can't edit it. I can't clone it because it's meant to be tight. It's doesn't fall exactly in line with the sensibilities of OER, but not everything on Adapt is designed in order to be OER that's put there. Kestrel asked a question. When you import a course, if you make changes to the course, does that affect the original course or only a version of the course that you adapt? It only affects the course that you created. So you're not able to affect other people's courses because you don't have editing rights on there. There are some unique aspects associated with how Adapt operates that's similar to how the LibreText libraries operate with a concept called transclusion. I don't want to talk about that right now. I'm happy to talk about that a little bit later on. That's part of that 25% of more complex behavior that's out there. So I'm going to click on one of these questions just to show what the question looks like from an instructor perspective. So again, I had 4 questions here. It shows it like an accordion, and this is what the question that comes in here. What happens to molecules in the sample for the input step of the ionizer or the instrument? It seems like it's a question connected to an instrumental analysis class, although this is an organic chemistry class. So, okay. I can go to question 2 and see that question, go to question 3, see that question 4, etc. We have it set up so every question has its attribution infrastructure that falls in line with Creative Commons attributions here, saying this assignment titled one is shared under all rights reserved. They did not make it public. Was authored by Kit Trim. Here's the source content that he added, which is just going to adapt LibreText, and it was edited to the style and standards. That's just our boilerplate to say that we have the rights to edit everything, so that you actually may not be exactly what the original topic is if it were harvested from a different source. For example, OpenStax question, things like that. There are a few other things connected to it. Oftentimes we have solutions, which are detailed descriptions in order to solve the question. Sometimes we have just answers, which are just basically what the answers are. They're not as pedagogically useful as worked out solutions, but they're shareable that's out there. So that is the general basis of what a course looks like. Again, a course has assignments. Assignments have questions. We release those questions at certain dates. We close them at other dates. We have a lot of infrastructure or things that we need to address in terms of building a good course and a good assignment. And I want to now transition into building a course from scratch instead of using someone else's courses that's out there. So, Sister Mary, you look like you got imported a course. That's great. Is anyone else having any difficulties and getting in? Okay, so I'm going to go back over this right here is breadcrumbs. And if I go to my courses, I'll go to the top. If I ever get lost and I want to just go to the top, I can also click on the logo and it will just go all the way to the front. Here's that course. I'm going to delete that course because I don't really need it anymore. And it goes away. So one thing to mention here is the concept of adapt is designed not too dissimilar from many other homework systems in that you have a core library. And hopefully that core library is as public as possible for everybody. Like I mentioned, there are possibilities in order to create questions that are private, but then everyone can pull from those questions in order to be able to populate their courses that they have out there. And that's the goal that I want to be able to have in place by the second half of this introduction after lunch. What we're not going to be discussing is building questions because that requires a bit of sophistication, in part because we have the four core technologies, and how you build a web work question is different than how you build an iMath AS question or a native question or an H5P question. And that requires a bit more advanced aspects behind there. But I encourage you to take a look at the questions and see how they're structured. And I'll show that after lunch. So again, the goal that I have for the next 15 minutes is to build a new course, and then we'll start adding assignments to it. So instead of importing the course, next to it, you have the new course button. I'm going to click on that. I would like you to do that too. And then you'll be able to have a modal. And the modal basically describes what properties or metadata connected with your course is necessary for how your course operates. It's asking questions that are expected. Most of you would expect these sort of questions, and they're not too dissimilar from questions that you'd experience in other platforms. So the first one is your school. That should be connected to the campus that your school is that you're already connected to. But if you happen to teach in other places, you could switch to other schools that are on here. Sadia asked the question, can we build a new course and adapt some of the questions from already available courses? Yes. Yeah, you can import other assignments from other courses if you want. Now, once we actually create that, and then you can go into those assignments and you can bring in the entire questions of an assignment and copy it over. And I'll show you that again after lunch. But again, the goal that we have right now is to create the course. So I'm gonna make a course name, test course, how I learned to love the cat. Um, it's a discipline. This is useful for being able to do searches that's out there. It's not required. Anything that has an asterisk is required. This one is not, but we probably will make it required out there. So I'm going to say that this right here is an art appreciation course. I can make a description. This is a description that's public. When you do a search through other people's courses, this is what you're able to see. This is what students are able to see when they actually sign in for the course. This is a really cool class. Um, the private descriptions are sort of annotations that you put that are meant to be private, so that you can come back to it and say, a year or two, a year later, in order to be able to address it. And I really hate this course. I prefer dogs. Again, students don't see that. Instructors will see that if they import the entire course, but it's a mechanism in order to be able to provide annotation in order to guide the construction of what you're doing. If you have a textbook that's connected to the course, the ADAPT course, you can paste it in here. It's optional. Um, and you can do that. I'm not going to do that here. Now we get into something a little bit more complicated in that you have a modality. The course can either be made traditional, which is summative, basically. So you need to sign in order to be able to access the questions. It can be made formative, and those don't require signing in. Those are actually what those demos that I pasted at the top of the chat or at the front of the presentation is set up as, so I can use it wherever I want. Those are questions that I will embed, for example, in textbooks in order to make it more engaging to the students, but I don't want the textbook itself to be a homework system requiring students to sign in. And anonymous is more complicated. Let's ignore that. Anytime that you get confused, if you see a little question mark, it'll pop up what's called a tooltip. That's a little panel right there to give you some advice in terms of what these things mean, to help to define them. And you'll see again, there are multiple questions up here. We didn't think you needed any help in course name, but if you do, please let us know. We can actually introduce it to a tip then. Okay, so now we have section and course registration number. Just call them 1 and 1. We're going to remove those soon, and they'll be handled on a separate panel. You don't need to handle them at the start of the course. This is useful if you want to pass back scores to your learning management system. Let me phrase that. Pass back final grades, for example, to Banner or other technologies that you have in place there. If you have scores going back to your learning management system, you never even worry about that. Uh, this is the term, so I'm going to say this is summer of 2025. I have a start date, which I'm going to start today, and I have an end date, which I'm going to make August 31st. Now, I need a start date and end date in order to be able to create these things. That's why they have asterisks right down there. I can make it public or private. For sake of this purposes, I'm going to make it private because I don't want people to get gummed up over a lot of introductory courses that are just being created out here. There's no reason for other people to know what we are created. And alpha, I'm going to skip over until later. That's part of the more complex behavior of how these things are set up. And lastly, I have text here that basically says I don't have an option, but many of you may be in campuses that are already set up, so the learning management system of that campus is already approved and wired up in order to use ADAPT. Uh, we have about 120 or so campuses across the country. The vast majority of them are in California that are already set up like that in order to be able to couple directly to your learning management system. This requires approval by your learning management system administrator. Uh, and that might be requiring lots of hoops or a little bit of hoops in order to be able to do. And we're happy in order to help in order to do that. So you might have a toggle switch on here that says yes or no. If it says yes, then that means that you're going to couple your course into your learning management system and you identify the course there. If it means no, then you're using it independent of your learning management system. And as I clearly indicated here in UC Davis, it's not coupled into your learning management system. So if we're missing any colleges, please let us know, and we're able to change these things. We got a list a handful of years ago, which is obviously changing all the time, including names and new campuses are coming on board and such like that. So we're always happy in order to update them. Let me just click this thing and then I'll answer a few of the other questions that are in the chat. If I've done everything right, I press save and it should work. If I've missed something, it won't work and it will give me some feedback saying I've done it. I need to go back and address something. So let me see if I've done everything right. I've done everything right, and it's created this course that's up there. So what I'd like you all to do is to be able to create the course, a course with some feedback that you have out there, and then we can move forward off of that. And while you guys are doing that, I will take a look at the chat in order to be able to address them. So Sadia asked, can we build a new course or adapt some of the questions from already available courses? I had addressed that. The answer is yes. Can we mix, Carl asked, can we mix summative and formative questions? You can mix, um, so a question intrinsically is not summative or formative. What makes something summative formative is the assignment and how you actually use it. Within one aspect off of there. So you can make an assignment in a course that is formative and another assignment in the course that's summative. So you can mix and match between the two if the course is designed to be summative. If you make the course formative, every single assignment has to be formative. Uh, so let me describe that again. If you've assigned it as formative when you actually created it, like I showed before, every assignment has to be set as formative. If you keep it as traditional or what we call summative, you can actually mix and match, and some assignments can be formative and some assignments can be summative. That being said, the questions that you add to formative have to be designated to be used as formative. Yeah. So, for example, if I create a question that I really like, and uh, someone else comes in and grabs it and puts it into a formative assignment, students can interact with it and get the answer from it, and it compromises that question. So that Google or ChatGPT or whatever finds it and then gives the answer that's out there. So in order to be able to be used in a summative question, either the question has to be already designated as a summative, or you have to create the question yourself, and then therefore you own the question and you have the rights to be able to use it as a summative thing. So there are limitations associated with that, and that's part of living as a community in order to be able to have the same effects or the same powers of being able to share these things publicly, but not infringe on other people's rights in terms of the questions that they created. And this is the happy medium that we thought that we've achieved. And I'm happy in order to address that question if I didn't fully do so before. Okay. Chaban said, is this okay? We changed the name. Uh, um, Letitia, if your LMS only has yes or no options, does that mean the institution has integration? Yes. If at the bottom of that list it has yes or no, that means that your campus is already ready to go. You can actually couple it to your learning management system. You can flip either answer. It doesn't really change what we're doing today, although I will be talking a little bit later on about how you can couple them together if you happen to be in a campus that's like that. Che, yours says contact us for instructor access. I believe that was the button that I had before. Your campus is not hooked into our system, so we need to talk to your learning management system in order to be able to process this. This is part of what LTI requires us to do. Uh, every single external tool now that couples via LTI is 1.3, the modern version requires this manual construction off of there. In the past, it used to not be there, and that's was a security hazard, and they decided to actually reduce it, and remove it that it's there. So, um, uh, and then there's some changes connected to it. Okay, so we have 5 more minutes before a case study that's going to be presented here. I just want to make sure that we're on track. Has everyone created a course?
Yes.
Okay, so that's step one. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the properties associated with that course, and then after lunch, we're going to add assignments to those courses. So I'm going to click on this course that I created, and it's bare. And I have a few buttons up here, new assignment, which creates a new assignment, imports assignment, which imports an assignment in the same way that you imported a course. This is the grade book. This is course properties, and this is some help, this inside that I talked about before. Right now, I just want to go to course properties. And the course properties has a range of buttons or options on the side here, which takes a lot more time than we have in order to go through each of the features off of here, but I want to talk about some of the few components of that. And then it has this generic information or general information. This general information is the same information that you had when you created this course. So you can come back and modify it if you decide that you don't want the right campus, or you actually want to change the modality, or if you want to make it public, or if you happen to have a switch here for your LMS, you can flip yes and no and do it. So you're not locked in stone. Now, and as long as students don't submit any scores or any results to your course, you have flexibility to be able to change it however you want. As soon as students start submitting things, then the database gets locked in order to be able to handle it, and then there are more complications. And we try to provide you with the greatest flexibility, but there will be some limitations off of there. So let's look at some of these things that are on the right-hand side here. The first one is we have sections. And now the vast majority of you probably don't teach classes with multiple sections. When I teach my large general chemistry class, I have 16 sections in there. Each section has its own lab and its own discussion time and even potentially its own TA in order to be able to run these things. So I want to be able to navigate all the sections in multiple ways, and I can add multiple sections onto it. Each section has its own access code if I want to be able to give a broad access code to anyone to be able to register into that course. I'm going to skip over whitelisting because it's not important. If your campus has graders or TAs, if you're an R1 institution, then you have the ability in order to assign a grader to your course, and they'll have grading capabilities, and you can limit how you want them to grade, what they can grade. You can even limit what they are allowed to see. For example, you can make it so the TAs can't see the students' names, but they just have to grade on the actual submission that are out there. Then we have students. When students enroll in the class, I can actually see the roster right here. I can invite students if I want, if I have a list of email addresses, and it will send out a request off of there. I can submit individual students onto it and such. If I couple this to a learning management system, I don't have to do any of this stuff. This is only if I'm not coupled to an LMS where I actually have to handle the
I
registrations.
bought them by the case when we were in soccer.
So, um, auto release, I'm going to talk about later on if we have time. It's just an opportunity in order to be able to decide when you want to release the solutions and the scores and in an automatic fashion, although you can do everything manual if you want. And such. The rest is relatively straightforward. If you click on them and you look at the Insight button that pops up off of here, the one thing that I'll end here is this button that says the reset course. That right there is the nuclear option. When you click on that, it deletes all student submissions, all students' names. It makes this course like it's a pristine course completely. It gets removed from our database. And that is important for a variety of purposes. One is that we don't want to be sitting on FERPA protected data for too long. It's radioactive, and we feel that we actually want to remove it as much as possible. When you click on that course, you have the opportunity in order to download the grade book and all the actually multiple grade books that come with it in order to be able to let you review it at a later date and such. So that's just some of the properties associated with these things. What we're going to start after lunch is building a new assignment and then adding questions to the assignment that's out there. And feel free to start playing around with that if you want to. Most of it's relatively straightforward, but there are a little bit of issues associated with the properties. So I'm going to step away here